I stepped out onto the front porch around 7 a.m., clutching a hot mug of coffee. The air was freezing, probably somewhere in the low 20s, and a fresh layer of snow had blanketed everything during the night. It looked like a postcard until I looked down at the steps. There, printed clearly in the white powder, were footprints. They weren't from a boot or a sneaker. They were bare feet, large and heavy, leading from the edge of the woods directly to my front door. I scanned the yard, expecting to see a second set of tracks heading back into the trees, but there was nothing. The snow was perfectly smooth everywhere else. It was as if someone had walked up to my house and just vanished into the wood of the door. My first thought was that one of my friends was pulling a localized prank, even though the nearest neighbor is over 2 miles away. I put on my boots and a heavy coat to walk the perimeter of the house. I checked under every window and around the back deck. The snow was at least 4 inches deep and completely untouched. There were no disturbances, no scuff marks, and no signs of anyone lurking. I went back inside and checked the deadbolt. It was still engaged. I'd been locked in alone all night, which meant whoever made those tracks had to be standing right outside my door while I slept, and they never walked away. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, so that afternoon, I drove into town and bought a Nest Cam. I mounted it right above the porch, ensuring it had a clear view of the steps and the tree line. I didn't sleep much that night. When the sun finally came up, I checked the porch before I even looked at my phone. The tracks were there again. They were identical to the first set, pressed deep into the new dusting of snow. I pulled up the footage, my heart hammering against my ribs, but the recording was useless. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the feed turned into a wall of digital static and gray glitches. It lasted for about 10 seconds. When the picture cleared, the footprints were already there, appearing out of nowhere. I knelt down on the porch to get a closer look at the prints. They were unsettling. The toe marks were nearly 3 inches long, tapering off in a way that didn't look entirely human. I noticed how deep they sank into the wood of the steps compared to my own tracks. I weigh about 130 pounds, but these prints had compressed the frozen slush, as if someone weighing at least 300 pounds had been standing there. There was no stride length to analyze either. The prints just stopped at the mat, right in front of the handle. The rest of the day was spent in a state of paranoid cleaning. I needed to stay busy, so I decided to tackle the storage closet and the attic access. While I was moving some old boxes near the ceiling, I noticed a rusted metal grate for a ventilation shaft I'd never paid attention to before. It was an old gravity-fed system that ran from the roofline, through the interior walls, and down toward the master bedroom. It was barely 8 inches wide, far too narrow for a person to fit through. I unscrewed the vent and shone my flashlight into the dark gap. Resting on a jagged piece of sheet metal was a small, torn scrap of plaid fabric. It was clean, dry, and definitely hadn't been there for years. I'd never owned anything with that pattern. I stared at the scrap, realizing that the shaft didn't just lead to the roof. It opened up into the crawl space behind my own bedroom wall. By midnight, the house felt too quiet. Usually, my cat, Oliver, would be darting across the hardwood floors or curling up at the foot of my bed. I called his name, shaking a bag of treats, but he didn't appear. I checked the basement, the closets, and even the cabinets. Nothing. When I went back to my room to grab my phone, I saw something shiny reflecting the bedside lamp. I reached under the bed frame and pulled out Oliver's breakaway collar. It was unbuckled and completely dry. There was no fur caught in the clasp, no signs of a struggle, and most importantly, no cat. He was just gone, leaving behind the only thing that tied him to me. I called the local sheriff's department the next morning. By the time Deputy Miller pulled his cruiser into my driveway, the temperature had climbed to 40 degrees. The sun was out, and the snow was turning into a muddy, unrecognizable slush. I tried to show him where the footprints had been, pointing at the faint, water-filled dips on the porch, but he barely looked. He stood there with his hands on his belt, sighing.
The mountain air and the isolation can play tricks on a person's mind. You know, the guy who lived here before you, an elderly man named Mr. Henderson, used to call in with the exact same complaints about footsteps, before he walked out of his front door one night and never came back. Maybe those hallucinations run in this house's history.
Since the police wouldn't help, I decided to rely on the internet. I set up a high-definition webcam and started a live stream, titled, "Something is in my house." Within an hour, I had over 5,000 people watching. I sat on the edge of my bed, explaining the footprints, the vent, and Oliver's disappearance. I was so focused on the camera lens that I didn't see the chat exploding with warnings. People were typing in all caps, telling me to look behind me. In the playback later, I saw it. The heavy wooden door of my walk-in closet, which I knew I'd latched shut, began to creak open. It didn't swing wide, just moved about 3 inches, stopping as if someone was peering through the dark crack from the inside. Driven by a mix of terror and adrenaline, I grabbed a heavy flashlight and a crowbar after the stream ended. I went into the closet and began tapping on the back panel. It sounded hollow. I pried at the baseboard, and the entire section of the wall shifted. Behind the drywall, I found a hidden crawl space that shouldn't have existed. I shone my light into the narrow gap. There was a thin sleeping bag, several empty cans of soup from my own pantry, and a pile of Polaroids. Picked one up. It was a photo of me sleeping, taken from the perspective of the ceiling vent, dated 3 weeks ago. Someone hadn't just been visiting. They had been living inches away from me for months. That evening, the weather turned violent. A massive nor'easter hit, bringing 50-mile-per-hour winds and blinding snow. Around 10 p.m., the power lines must have snapped because the house plunged into total darkness. I sat in the middle of my living room with a battery-powered lantern, clutching the crowbar. That's when I heard it. It wasn't the wind or the trees hitting the roof. It was a rhythmic, frantic scratching. It started in the kitchen wall, then moved to the hallway, and finally to the ceiling above my head. The sound was coming from inside the partitions, circling the entire perimeter of the room. I wasn't being hunted from the woods anymore. I was being hunted from inside the architecture of my own home. I stood frozen in the center of the living room, my lantern casting long, distorted shadows against the drywall. The scratching inside the walls was constant now. That was the moment the logic finally clicked in my head. There were no tracks leading back to the woods because the person who made them never had any intention of leaving. Every morning I saw those footprints. I was looking at a hunter entering his den. He wasn't a visitor. I was his unwitting roommate. I dropped to my knees, shining my light toward the gap. It was narrow, maybe only 2 inches wide. I saw a movement, twitching limb. Then, a face pressed into the gap. His skin was a sickly, translucent gray. His limbs looked elongated, bent at wrong angles to fit inside the walls. He didn't blink. He just stared at me with wide, unmoving eyes. I scrambled backward, my boots slipping on the hardwood. I had to get out. I ran for the front door, my fingers fumbling with the deadbolt. I twisted it, but it just spun aimlessly in the socket. Every single exit was the same. The internal thumb turns had been gutted and replaced. I was deadbolt inside my own cage. I was trapped in a 3,000 square foot box with a man who knew the layout of the walls better than I knew my own furniture. The scratching stopped. It was replaced by the heavy thud of wood splintering. He was done hiding. I sprinted into the bathroom and shoved the vanity cabinet against the door. I sat in the porcelain tub, clutching the crowbar so hard my knuckles turned white. I heard the drywall in the bedroom burst open. Then came the sound of him dragging his body across the carpet. A wet, sliding noise. He began to throw his weight against the bathroom door.
2 days later, a patrol car climbed the winding driveway. The storm had passed, leaving a crisp, 10-inch blanket of white over the entire property. When the officers breached the front door, they found the house in total disarray. Sections of the walls had been torn out from the inside, but the house was silent. There was no sign of Emma, no sign of the intruder, and no sign of a struggle. The lead investigator walked out onto the back porch. He found a single set of footprints. They belonged to a woman's size 7 winter boot. They led away from the house in a straight, purposeful line toward the dense tree line. The officers followed the tracks for over a mile, until they simply vanished into the deep brush. Just like the tracks Emma had seen days before, there was only one set. A single path leading away from the home, with absolutely nothing leading back. Thanks for hanging out and listening until the very end. This story really creeps me out because it could happen to anyone living in an old house. What would you do if you found out someone was living in your walls for months? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Stay safe out there, and maybe check your vents tonight. Go watch some of our other videos if you want more chills. This was an original story written just for this channel. See you in the next one.